Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullish Show. Today I have with me Ange de Lumiere. Now, Ange is an ex-corporate lawyer who decided to become a spiritual business mentor. Now, it might sound weird to some of you, but I am very much on board with the power of tapping into our, I suppose, supernatural consciousness that shows up. Now, it's still going to sound a little bit weird, but Anne spent 15 years working as a lawyer before starting her side hustle as a spiritual business mentor. She has built her side hustle by working only one day a week in her business for years. So she has a lot to share for people who want to build a business on the side. Her website is 𝓦𝓱𝓪𝓽.co.uk, and she currently lives in the UK. She speaks very good French. She says she actually speaks Finnish when she's really drunk. No, I made that up. And she also speaks a bit of Spanish. So she's about 3 or 4 languages ahead of me. And welcome to the show. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
So, Ange, we had a quick chat before we hit the record button on the podcast here. And tell me a little bit about the story that and how it started that led you from being a corporate lawyer or as a young person living in France, an experience that you just told me before that was I suppose, a hint of where the future lay for you. Tell us about how you started as a corporate lawyer and then what happened along the way that took you from where you were to where you are today.
Okay, thank you for the question. It's interesting. Even how I became a lawyer is interesting because I had no desire to be a lawyer when I was little. It wasn't on my radar. In fact, I had all sorts of dreams of being an astronomer, astrophysicist, whatever, artist. Lawyer was never on on the horizon. But I was a practical girl, and my parents sort of told me, these are pipe dreams. You have to be practical. And so I went to see like a career counselor, and she said, you'd be great at law. And she was right. I had the right kind of frame of mind to be a great lawyer, and I became a great lawyer. I made it first in my year when I graduated. I did an international program where I got to study in the UK. I did a translation school, English and Spanish, at the same time as I did my law studies. And the future was very promising. And I embarked in a 15-year career as a lawyer, traveling the world. It was fascinating, interesting, stimulating, everything that anybody could wish for. But at the very start of that career, when I was still a student and I was doing an internship, and I could actually pinpoint the exact time because it's on Wikipedia, that incident, which we discussed before we hit the record button. I had planned to go and buy some books and maybe some music because it's the favorite thing for me to buy in a big multi-story place called the Fnac in Montparnasse in Paris after work. And at the last moment, when I was literally in the metro wondering whether to go out of the train, I felt so tired that I couldn't be bothered. But it was instant. One moment I was fine, I was going to go do the shopping. The next, I just couldn't think of it. I couldn't be bothered, went straight home. And the moment I came out of the metro, actually, I started seeing all these emergency vehicles driving past. And I was only 2 stations from where I was going to go shopping. It was quite close to where I lived. And I wondered what was going on. And I found out that evening that there had been a bomb attempt at the exact spot in front of the shop that I had planned to go to. At the time, I would have walked past had I not decided to go home instead. And I know today, with hindsight, this was my intuition. But because I knew nothing about intuition back then, I just discarded it as a weird thing that happened to me. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners would have had these experiences, maybe not as dramatic as mine, but something a little bit weird where something's going to happen and it happens, or you think about someone and then they call you, or you go to a place not knowing, or you take a right turn when you drive, whereas normally you would go straight or turn left, and you find yourself in exactly the right place at the right time. This has happened to all of us. And I would actually love if you could share that one of your experiences with me on this podcast of something that's happened to you recently of that sort?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking me a question. So, I was in the middle of a career transition, which means basically looking for work. I was unemployed, and I was looking for my next thing, and I was intrigued by social media. A friend of mine, actually a lady I went out with for a few weeks or months, and she said, you should get on social media. So I got on social media. I was curious about that, and I discovered this world of social media. So this is possibly going to change the world. This is 2009, and I came across a blog by HubSpot. Said, if you've got an inkling of what you want to do or start in business, start a blog. So I started from an innate curiosity about what I believe was a powerful trend of social media. I started writing. So for the next 4 years, I got up at 4:30 a.m. and wrote for 4 hours, published a post every day. And it was almost like I was channeling the universe. It was really weird. And I'm still today really, really intrigued by what was the driver behind that. It almost felt like I was channeling a consciousness. I'd almost know like someone else. It was like I was channeling a curiosity almost supported by the planet. And so I started writing, and I ended up with 4 or 5 million visitors a year to my blog and got invited to speak all around the world. And I am, today I don't get up at 4:30 a.m. to write. I have the time to do it in reasonable time, but I am still intrigued today by what happened back then. And that was about 2009 through to about 2013. And it changed my life. And that was really, really exciting. I even, would get on my bike to ride to the office at, 5 a.m. in the morning. At 5:30, I was at my desk and I was writing. And then I made sure I was publishing something every day by 8:30. And then email marketing started after that. So for me, it wasn't so much a singularity that you had about an intuition. Yeah. It was more about a creative instinct and driver that showed up. And I think for a lot of artists, I think what happens for them is they feel like they are just channeling the universe through them. They are just the holder of the paintbrush or the holder of the camera. And I certainly have experienced what you've talked about. So sometimes it's not, for me, it was an inkling that then turned into an incredibly powerful force that you cannot put a label on it. It just shows up. When it shows up, what you've got to do is you've got to ride that wild pony and have fun with it. And today we're still riding that pony, and we've had some fun along the way. And now we're starting to write about, as we evolve into the AI world, I think AI is going to change humanity, and we're just trying to work out what that looks like, what that smells like, what it feels like. A lot of people are frightened by it. A lot of people are excited by it. I'm more excited than frightened by it, but I think what we have is we're in the middle of some of the biggest change to humanity in our entire Homo sapien evolution. And it's at a pace that is overwhelming and confusing because humans don't like change, but we're in the middle of the biggest change to humanity that we've ever seen. And I think you just got to be open to that. And so that was my experience about, I suppose, something surreal that I cannot add. I cannot put logic to it, but it showed up. And I listened and I acted. And the thing for me today that's really important, and I will share with people, and I have shared it, is that you've got to do 3 things as a human. I think we're all innately creative, whatever that is. Might be a fashion designer, it might be an artist, it might be a writer, it might be an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is a creative pursuit. I think we need to create We then need to share it with the world and publish, and then we need to share it and market it. And I don't mean it in a non-authentic way. I'm just going, put it out there to the world. So you need to do one thing, create. I think we need to do that. And I think that will bring you a sense of purpose that will just support you through your entire life if you embrace it. Two, you need to publish. In other words, put it into the public space, because that's the only place that you'll actually change people. Otherwise, it's just an idea. And then you need to actually share that published piece of public content with the world. And that's where the magic happens, is where you share you with the world. And I think, and that's the interesting thing about AI, for example, is that AI can't do storytelling. And I think the power of humanity will actually be accelerated and amplified through AI, because AI will be an amplification of our humanity if you're willing to embrace it.
Well, I'm so glad I asked the question. Thank you. And you reminded me of one thing, because this is something I haven't shared with you earlier. The second probably marker on my journey of understanding this thing that was happening is I became a mosaic artist. It was for my enjoyment. That was back in France, carried through to the UK. But one day, one of the first pieces I did, literally, I felt my hands had done the piece. I didn't see it coming. I didn't plan it. It was like it unfolded in front of me, and I wanted to understand what is happening here. It feels like there's this, exactly as you said, this big piece of conscious thing that's flowing through me into my hands onto this piece of wood with all these broken pieces. And it's only when I trained in mediumship in 2008 that I understood that concept. What's happened to you? What's happened to me? What might be happening to other people? People are afraid of channeling, and I don't like to use the word, because there are some really out there people who channel and who have completely lost touch with reality. And I want people to understand that it can happen to each and one of us when we get in the zone. And training as a clinical hypnotherapist has really helped me hone that process and understanding how the mind works. And then I trained in Reiki as well. I don't know if you've ever heard of Reiki. I'm a Reiki master.
Yep.
So then I understood about energy, and it all started to make sense. Everything tied together, because if you understand the mind and how thoughts work, but if you understand energy, then it makes complete sense that we would receive inspiration from something that's not necessarily human.
Yeah. And well, I think it is very human, because it's actually human energy that's actually being channeled.
Yes, no, I agree. No, I agree, actually.
Yeah, but it feels superhuman, because the reality is that we can't make sense of it. I think that's what's interesting. So you're a lawyer for 15 years, very successful, traveling the world. What happened next?
So what happened is I had a reading that helped me to move, a psychic clairvoyant reading that helped me to move from Paris to London, because back then I was a mum of 2 children under 5. I was going to leave my husband, leave my support system, move to another country. That's a pretty big move. And I felt that it had a lot of implications, not just for me, which would be fine, but for my children as well. So I wanted that bit of reassurance from someone who could look into the big picture and tell me, this is such a bad idea, never move to the UK, or go ahead, do it. And I did. So I went to see this woman, and she said, you're absolutely meant to go to the UK. This is what you're supposed to do. Go ahead. You have my blessing. And I did. And she was right. I thrived in the UK. I loved it. I had this amazing job offer in London. Loved my job, but then I lost my job, so I had to reinvent myself. So I trained in clinical hypnotherapy because I had always been fascinated by past lives, how the mind works, etc. And what was interesting is I had written a book, like a novel back in France, but like through sweat and blood. It was really a hard process. I every word felt painful. You know, like the traditional author sort of dilemma energy of, you know, I have to write, but boy, I wish I hadn't to. I didn't have to. And then I went into a writer's block for 10 years. But when I trained in clinical hypnotherapy, it's almost like all of this lifted, and I was able to write a book in literally 6 months. That was 100,000 words effortlessly.
Wow. Okay.
And this made me think, you know, what's happening here? I want to understand what's behind this and how this can help other people as well. And I think I lost a little bit of the thread of the question that you've just asked me that led me to talk about this.
So basically, we're asking you what was the journey from finishing as a corporate or finishing as a lawyer? Yeah. Where did you go from corporate or from a lawyer to being where you are today? So it's just the story of you.
Yeah. So yeah, now I remember the thread. So I had this reading before moving into the UK, and then a couple of years later, after I lost my job, I was like, I'd like to go and see for another psychic because I feel a bit lost again. Maybe I could just do some guidance. And literally, the woman, she did a really good reading, but at the end, she said, you know, do you mind if my husband comes in? I want him to have a look at you, whatever. And I thought, oh my God, what's going on? Her husband was a palm reader. So he looked at my hands and he said, do you know that you have angel dust coming out of your hand? And I said, no. And I walked away.
That's a bit out there. Okay, right.
It was completely, I wasn't prepared for this. It was actually unpleasant. You know, I was like, I don't want to hear this. This doesn't make sense to me. So out of my comfort zone of my framework. Went back to my car after paying them because, you know, she'd done a good job so far. And then it got me thinking, and I was like, if I have this gift, which I actually don't believe in, maybe I'm just supposed to use it, you know, whether I believe it or not, let's give it a try. So I trained in spiritual healing. Then I trained in Reiki, which is what led me to be a Reiki master.
Right.
That completely changed my life because I couldn't see the world in the same way as I used to. And so this sent me on a 15-year journey of exploring all the things that are out there, completely opposite of what I used to be or used to do. And at one point I had to reconcile the two because I'm a very logical person, actually. And I like processes, and I like, you know, I like to ground things. And that's when I started calling myself a spiritual lawyer, because I believe I'm still a lawyer, once a lawyer, always a lawyer, apparently. But I like to bring in all these elements that enhance our lives, that bring us another dimension into maybe even the mundane. Because then when you see into the bigger picture, then you bring to it a quality of passion and life that is different. You know, you can't be in the routine anymore because everything, it's almost like you switch on the lights. Yes. It's like Einstein said, either you think everything's a miracle or you think nothing's a miracle. Well, I went from, I didn't think anything was a miracle to thinking everything is a miracle. And to be honest, I think it's such a gift that I wish everybody could experience the same thing.
So what are you doing today in terms of, you're saying a spiritual business mentor? What's that look like?
So it looks like helping people who do business well and who are successful, but maybe have lost the spark. It's become a routine, and they say, you know, now what? What's next for me? And they want to look into the bigger picture to see maybe if they have a specific purpose, or if you know, where are they going from there? And to bring these elements of spirituality into the business. Either through intuition, because I've studied intuition now for 15 years, and I wrote a book called The Intuitive Revolution in Business that can help people understand how they can use their intuition to enhance their decision-making process and everything they do in business. Like, I love what you were describing earlier when I asked you the question about your intuitive moment, and how you explained how this made everything so much easier for you, and that you were inspired. And it's like, the energy was almost irresistible for you, right? Because you had tapped into that thing that you didn't know what it was, and you were brave enough to trust it. And that's one thing. Not everybody's brave enough to trust it.
Yeah, well, I was almost, I would say, possessed in a very positive way.
Yeah, but I'm so glad you used those words, because that's how I feel when I do the work that I do. Because I tune into the big picture, the big energies. It feels like my eyes are different. I see different things than most people do, but it's very exciting. So I very often help people who have big visions but don't believe in themselves.
Yep.
And then with all the mindset tools that I have and the experience that I have, I can help them. No, actually, this is in your, I don't know if you've heard of the Akashic Records. That's what I read. So it's the book of life for each soul. Right. So I'm able to see, if I was looking into yours, which I'm not, because I always ask permission and it's always in the private setting. Yep. I would look into it and I would see what your entire life looks like. What's your path? Where are you going? What are the crucial points on it? And it's so exciting when you're able to look into it. But then you have to bring it in to the physical. You have to ground it. You have to make it practical. And what's really interesting is that I end up very often helping people niche, which, as I'm sure you know, in the online world is super important. And this big picture tells me you should be doing a video series, or no, actually an ebook, it would be better, or this challenge would be good, or this is your ideal client, in the finest detail, but it's completely aligned with the energy or the bigger picture, if that makes any sense. So it makes it super easy. So I suppose if you'd known me before you started all your channeling stuff, or your what you're doing now, I would have told you what you're going to do that. Basically, that's what I do. And then I would have supported you maybe through the wobbles or the doubts, or, when that critical mind kicks in and tells you, this is nuts, stop doing it. You're off your trolley, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I suppose as a writer, which is what I became, and if I wrote basically an essay a day, and if you told me at the age of 18 when I went to university that I would love writing an essay a day, I would have told you were completely bonkers. But I think I'm an innately curious person, and when I see something in the world show up that I believe is, a game changer. I'm one that likes riding the trends and evolving with them. And I couldn't live I was a teacher, but I couldn't see a future, and I had to leave that behind. But I've become a teacher, but in a different sense to the world through my writing.
Yeah.
So, but it's really interesting trying to work out. And a lot of people, and I really believe that every human is innately creative. And it's just a matter of trying to find that child again and that creator again that disappeared when we maybe chose a life or career based upon societal pressures, family pressures that sometimes take us a lifetime to rediscover or are never discovered.
Yeah. And that's what I did when I chose to be a lawyer. Rather than all my pipe dreams, or supposed pipe dreams. Who knows where I would be today if I decided to be an artist and fully embrace it completely. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, do you have a process or a template or a system that when you engage with a client, to take them from, let me put it in alliteration terms, from the mundane to the magical again?
Yeah.
What's your way of doing that?
So as I mentioned briefly, and okay, the method's important, but it isn't in a way. Yeah. I tune into the energy of the person, the soul, their business, because I believe actually businesses have souls. And sometimes when you see these big corporations, they've been created by one person, the founder, and maybe they've disconnected with the spirit of the founder. And so they lose their soul. Some businesses actually do lose their souls and have to be reconnected to whatever it was that they were created in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I do that, but also I have a framework that I call the EPIC framework, because I believe that success needs good foundations. And so there's 4 pillars of success in my experience. Yep. So the EPIC stands for E for energy, P for prosperity, I for intuition, and the C is a triple C of clarity, courage, and confidence, which is the mindset sort of aspect of it. And these 4 pillars, I've actually just created a quiz for people to find out which of these areas are a little bit vulnerable or not as strong as they should be, because they're going to trip you up the more successful you become.
Yep.
So if your energy pillar is not strong enough, your health is going to start suffering from your success. If it's the prosperity angle, you're going to start sabotaging yourself financially, because, I'm pretty sure you've heard of 𝓀𝓪𝓻𝓷 and his book, The Big Leap. He talks a lot about sabotaging and how when we reach a level of success that we are not used to, it triggers us, it triggers our fears, and we try to bring ourselves down.
Yeah, because it doesn't match what our expectation or says about us.
Or your nervous system's not used to being happy, that happy or that successful. So it'll create a problem just to bring yourself down into something that because our subconscious nervous system, whatever you want to call it, is used to a certain level of, I suppose, lifestyle or a certain experience. And if we come out of it, doesn't matter if the change is positive, it feels dangerous to be out of your comfort zone. So that's the prosperity angle. The intuition angle is that until you really tap into that intuitive power of yours, and I believe everybody's intuitive, okay? Psychics is different. It's like the athletes of the intuitive world, right? Not everybody's going to take part in the Olympics, but everybody can walk and run and swim. Well, most people. I understand that for some people there's challenges. So we're all intuitive, but we don't understand it. And so because we don't understand it, we fear it, we ignore it, or we misinterpret it. When we start learning all these things about intuition, what happens is what happened to you. Decisions become effortless. You're almost guided. Everything becomes more fun, more creative, and success is almost a byproduct of how much you enjoy what you're doing, right? So you can have success the hard way and you can have success the easy way. Intuition is the difference.
Right.
Mind you, I will tell you, some entrepreneurs and some business owners value the hard work, paradigm so much that they do not want to lean into this, because they feel that if they had success in an easy way, it wouldn't really be success. They wouldn't really deserve it. So
they haven't earned it. Yeah,
I haven't earned it. So there's a bit of that mindset piece that can derive from the intuition piece. In effect, they're all interlinked, but we're trying to find those 4 pillars. And then of course the mindset piece, and I don't know if you will agree with me, but it's something that I've heard again and again in the entrepreneurial circles, is that success is 50% mindset, 50% strategy and action. If you don't have clarity of thinking, if you have limiting beliefs that actually do not match your desires or your goals or your dream, then it's never going to work, because it's going to impact the decisions that you're going to make. You're not going to put yourself out of your comfort zone. You're not going to go do that talk in front of an audience because you're too scared to speak in public, or maybe you have body image issues. And so even though you're able to speak, you wouldn't actually stand on the stage. So all these things are very important. And I want people to understand that, people want to feel confident, right? But it's not confident that comes first. In my EPIC framework, it comes last. You have to have clarity first, and then you have to have courage. And it's only when you've had the courage that the confidence rides on the wings of the courage. Because you do something scary, you survive it, and then you think, oh, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And then you do it again. And this is what builds confidence. It's the action piece.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you. Like, once you get that affirmation and validation as you do things and they start to flow and work, then it's almost like this virtuous cycle of affirmation that keeps pushing you to keep moving forward and flow. Yeah.
There's sometimes a glitch, because as you know, as entrepreneurs, we fail a lot to succeed. So that mindset piece is also important to understand, that failure is part of success. You can't have one without the other. And in a funny way, when I just came out of my job as a lawyer, I was like, I'm going to be the only entrepreneur on earth that's never going to fail.
Right. Okay.
That was my frame, because I just couldn't fathom, I couldn't the idea of failure was so terrifying for me. I had to be the only entrepreneurs who would never fail. Of course, it never happened, but but that's where our mindset can get us stuck, you know, and then we don't take risks, or if we fail, we take ages to recover. Whereas really, we should just bounce back, dust ourselves off, and say it's completely normal. But we do have an education system, and I don't know if it's the same in Australia, where the emphasis is put so much on succeeding, on getting it right, on passing the test, etc., that there's not really a lot of space for failure in the education system. So we're not prepared for failure in school.
Yeah, and I think that's a very interesting word to use, failure, and also education system doesn't prepare us for failure. I think in the Western world, failure is seen as a problem rather than as an opportunity, because failure is actually where you really learn. You don't learn from comfort.
Yeah.
You learn from the challenges. Because I certainly experience it, and I get more comfortable. Oh, everything's all right. I can just chill, lay back and not do anything. Whereas you really need to keep leaning forward into that in a positive way. So and that's then raised the idea of how do you keep motivated once you reach a certain level of success? Because you're going, I've got enough money. I'm earning X dollars a year. I've got, no debt. I've got a home over my head. I've got great friends. So, but a lot of people are driven by fear as well. And it's this interesting paradox between what drives you. Is it this motivation and curiosity about what you're doing, or are you driven by fear? And there's a lot of people driven by fear.
Yeah. And we live in a society that serves us a daily dish of fear.
It's about,
if not every minute.
It's about surviving. That's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where looking into the bigger picture can be this incredible motivation. So I was shown that I'm supposed to put intuition on the curriculum for all the way from primary school to universities. I have no clue how this is going to happen, but this is what drives me. And every day I wake up excited by it, because I don't know how it's going to happen. All I need to know is that I need to show up, like in this podcast interview, and share what I'm passionate about. And it's going to take me where it needs to take me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a way that you can fight when you have everything, or you think you have everything. Sometimes you think you do, and then you lose it, and then you have to start again. But whatever, when you think you have everything, this is the kind of thing that can give you that spark. Mm-hmm. Or even learning how to read people in a different way can make it incredibly exciting, because you'll connect with people at such a deeper level than you would normally when you have those tools.
Yeah. And that fascinates me. I've just finished a book by David Brooks, and it's called How to Know a Person. And it's about how to deeply see yourself and how to see others. And it's about storytelling. It's about listening with attention. And it is fascinating. So it's like taking listening skills to a whole new level. And that's where I believe the magic happens, is when you've got the ability to actually listen and be with someone. Because I really think out of that comes incredible insights. And I think we all need to learn how to listen to people's stories and connect with people, because as a Harvard research study showed over 85 years, is that real happiness comes out of really healthy, positive relationships. And that's been shown in other research, such as the blue zones all around the world, is that people that have beautiful, great relationships through tribe and community are some of the happiest people in the world, and they actually have the benefit of living a long time.
And you're right. I think we need to bring that presence element.
Oh, yeah.
And the presence comes from being connected to yourself to start with.
Yep.
So sometimes that's also the work that I do with my clients, is to work on themselves so that their entire world can be changed.
Yep, I totally agree. And I think awareness of others has to start with being aware of yourself. And that's where it's got to come from. You've got to have the two elements. self-awareness that then leads to awareness of others. And that is a pretty magical equation.
Mm. And as part of my training as a Reiki master, I did actually a year-long listening skills training.
Yep.
I thought I was a good listener before that. I realized I was pretty rubbish because I was always thinking, listening to the person, when can I intervene? When can I say my piece? When am I going to have a chance to say what I want to say? Whereas it's really about just being there and taking it all in and silencing that voice that wants me. What's about me? You know, and that doesn't mean that we're not important.
Yep. No,
it doesn't. We have to create that space of listening. Yeah.
Because really good listening is really hard work.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I find, because I'm a podcaster too, I found this has really helped me to listen to people.
Yes, and one of the reasons that I am passionate about listening and listening skills and communication skills is because my dad was shit at listening.
Sometimes they're the best teachers in that way, aren't they?
And like, I had a great dad. He loved me, gave us a great home, but he was a great talker, but a shit listener. And I made a promise to myself as I grew up that I wouldn't be such a talker that I would annoy people that they would actually turn away, because that's what happened. I watched people turn off as my dad didn't listen. It was all about him. And it's really hard work to switch off the inner all about me. What am I going to say next? What am I going to say to be important, rather than going, let's hear your story. I'm curious.
And, you know, I don't know if that's how you feel about your dad, but I can think of at least two people in my life who were like that growing up. I think that's because they hadn't been listened themselves. So they weren't able to listen to others. So this is why I'm saying sometimes you need to start with you. And once you've listened to yourself enough, you've done the work, then you can be there for other people because you've been there for yourself.
Yeah. I think we've got to love ourselves first before we can love other people, because you've got to be gentle with yourself first, because we're all pretty tough on ourselves.
Oh, I'm the worst. Yeah, my own worst critic. The things my mind say to myself, I would never say in public. Yeah.
So what you're doing today, did that start as a side hustle?
Yeah. And I would say it still is to a certain extent, because I had to homeschool my children. I have 4 autistic children, 2 of them grown up now. Wow. And so I had to do things on the side. And as they grow up, I'm right now in the middle of a divorce as well. So that's why it's still a side hustle. But I have put all the foundations in place for it to blossom when the time is right. Right. And I think maybe that's the message I'd like to give your audience. I don't know if they don't have a lot of time, maybe they have a job, maybe they want to create something so that they can get out of their jobs. Even if you feel frustrated about not having enough time, you have enough time. Don't worry. You can work on your foundations. And when the time comes, you know, it's like this soil. The soil takes time, you know, and some people do it fast because they have the time. It's the right opportunity, the right timing. But for others like me, we're more like slow bloomers. But when the time is right, I know it's going to happen.
Yeah. And we all have the time. It's just a matter of priority. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. As well, completely. Yeah. So just like you said, talking about waking up at 4 o'clock every day for 3-4 years because you had this drive. I wrote books. I woke up. I did most of my business whilst I was homeschooling when they were younger, between 5 and 8 in the morning. And when everybody woke up, that was it. My business was done. Or then I'd had my phone at hand, and when I had a little pause, I'd, you know, do a bit more social media, a bit more this, a bit more that. I still managed to launch 3 podcasts, write 3 books and publish them, all that with a family of 4, you know. So, and 2 of them, I was a single mom, and now I'm a single mom again. So it is possible. But I heard so much in the online business industry you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. No, this is why also I'm passionate about taking intuition, because you will know what's right for you. Obviously, we need to learn the skills, right? You're a marketer, you know how to do the marketing. I had no clue. I mean, as a lawyer, I'd never had to sell myself. So it was painful. It was slow learning about the marketing. I think I've nailed it pretty much now. I'm really happy with it. So we do have to learn things, but we have to be discerning what we learn, what we take on, what works for us, what doesn't. And to have that strength in ourselves to believe that if we've had the dream, then the dream will happen as long as we show up day after day. And I think people need people like you and me to tell them, keep going, don't give up, be patient. Some people you see, you think they're overnight successes. Sometimes they've taken 10 years to get there, sometimes 20 years. I'm sure you have plenty of examples. I'm not very good at remembering names and data like that, but there's so many even entrepreneurs. Like I think Louise Hay started in her 60s. Phenomenal. There's no really age limit other than what we put in our minds.
Yeah, I think that society's limitations put on us, our parents' limitations, our friends' limitations. I think you've got to listen to yourself and create your own path. It's a little bit like the Holy Grail, the story of King Arthur and the knights. And the knights headed off into the forest to find the Holy Grail. In other words, their journey to find salvation, if you like. There was no path into the woods or the forest. Because once a path's been done, it's been done by someone else. That's their path. We all are unique individuals. We need to find our own path. So that's where you need to listen to your intuition and step into that flow, because that's where the magic happens. And I love Steven Spielberg's comment about what we're meant to be doing in life. He said it never shouts, it only whispers.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I see intuition as a satellite navigation system that is going to actually give you the instructions to go on your path.
Yep.
So you receive those little nudges, you follow. But what I want to understand is exactly like your sat nav in your car as well. Is that if you take the wrong path, you'll be redirected. So don't be afraid to make a mistake.
Exactly. You need to step into the future. And that's what.
But if you don't move, the satellite navigation system can't give you directions. So you've got to have movement and inspiration, both at the same time.
And the old cliche, the adventure always starts with just the first step, and that's what you've got to do.
And yet it's scary, Yeah,
it is. So before we wrap this up, Ange, any tips on people that are either stuck, which I think you maybe deal with a lot of people that are stuck, or are looking for their purpose in life as an entrepreneur or starting a side hustle? What are some top tips that you would say to them?
So I would say listen to people who've done it and who are inspiring. So definitely listen to your podcast, Jeff. And actually, I've subscribed to it, and I'm going to listen to some of the episodes after today. I would say do your research, because research is always good. I actually have a 7-step process to make decisions. And the first step is to put everything on paper. Like empty your mind, because we have so much noise in our mind, so much do's, don'ts, etc. Too many ideas sometimes. And it's not necessarily that you don't have an idea, it's that you have too many. And then look at the piece of paper and see if anything stands out. Because I find for me, sometimes intuition is almost like there's a word on paper that stands out from the rest. It's not like it's highlighted, but energetically, my eyes are attracted to it. So putting things on paper and doing that for the very first step. Planning is something I've resisted for a very long time, but I think now is imperative if you want to start something. When you have a project, you need to know what are the steps. Break it down in small steps that are doable. So that would be my 3 top tips.
Right. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And if there's any links you want to share with anyone to your resources,
I think the easiest would be my website, which is the www.theintuitiverevolution.co.uk, which you've already mentioned, because from there you'll find all my socials. You'll find the quiz that I mentioned, where people can find out which of the pillars are wobbly and need work. You'll find my podcast as well. So, everything's in there.
Awesome. Thanks, Ange, for having a conversation with me from the other side of the world. It's been an absolute pleasure and a joy. And we're all navigating life, and I think we've got to realize that pain and struggle is just part of being human, and it's not a failure. It's actually just part of life. And I think and you've revealed that to the world as well. And thank you for sharing your intuition, insights, and story with us. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for your audience for entertaining me as well. It's been an absolute pleasure to me as well, and unexpected, because I had no expectations for this conversation, so it was even better.
Thank you.